I can't sleep. Why can't I sleep? Oh, I tried to. Believe me, I did. I tried sleepy time tea. I tried reading. I tried just laying down in the mass of pillows Mortem has to make up their bed, but none of it has worked. So, what else can I do if I can't sleep? I guess the only thing I could think to do is be productive, right? I mean, we're on a time clock thing, I think. God, I'm not making any sense. So, it occurred to me, before I tried to talk about the various kingdoms and their history, I thought it would be beneficial if I were to talk about how history is recorded in Otherworld. You see, several species, including my own, live very long lives. So, unlike humans, the individual years don't really carry as much weight as, say, the decades would, or even half a century might. Because of this, history has been summarized into eras. While eras span several hundred years, they help encapsulate what those periods of time are remembered for. While individual kingdoms and species might have more specified historical events, eras are a form of universal recorded history. So with that said, let's look at a timeline, shall we? As you can see, we've got a few major eras to talk about. I should let you know that the current era that I am from hasn't gotten a name yet, mainly due to the fact that, you know, we're living in that period of time, so we're not going to worry about it. First up, we have the Lost Era. Sadly, we don't have any records of this era, or what may have occurred, hence the whole lost part of the era. The only reason we are aware of anything regarding this period of time is because of the goddess Valvian. She was the one to inform mortal historians about the era. She did not care to explain what occurred during this time, but hey, at least we know it exists, right? Right. Next is the Forgotten Era. Yeah, it's weirdly similar to the Lost Era, but there are a few differences. For instance, we know vague myths. Ooh. Yeah, we've been able to determine that some of the mythology that has prevailed throughout history likely originated from this era. For example, long ago, our world was once united, a singular continent ruled by one kingdom and one particularly very powerful queen, apparently. And that when that time came to an end, the world cracked and separated, leading to the... Fuck, I lost my place. Shit. Oh, there it is. Continents becoming what they are now, and all the various species and all the cultures we have today and all the languages are all because that one kingdom fell apart. Pretty standard myth, right? Anyhow, the last thing we know for certain is that any written down information was destroyed, leaving us to only be able to pass down verbally what history we have. Hence why there's such ridiculous myths like the one about how the world was, you know, broken apart. This would lead to the era of rebirth. What is the era of rebirth, I hear you asking? Well, let me tell you! During this time, immortal species were first recorded. They were also noted for getting along with mortals, which I can't fathom that idea. But apparently it happened. This is also when the gods were first recognized by immortals and immortals alike as the true authority of their various dominions, and were to be worshipped accordingly. Another way to help identify this era is this is when we first started hearing about some of the kingdoms that we know to this very day. For example, the Kingdom of Victa. It is also during this time that we had our first recordings of the Great Green Dragon Zirian. While this era saw a lot of growth and development for just species in general and the gods, it did come to an abrupt end, that end being war. The next era to follow was the Fallen Era, known for when immortals and mortals first began to go to war against each other. The immortal species was led by a mad king who believed that all mortals should be subjugated and ruled over due to the superiority of his own kind, which was something that the gods themselves could not abide by. Not much else is known about this period except for the hardship and violence that had occurred. Xerion was last seen during this era, and for the first time, the gods had to directly intervene to try to stop the war, leading to the goddess Ethereal to open the gates to Toralien. The era ended with the fall of Havencrest, though we don't know what Havencrest was, if it was a person, a place, the king, we don't really know. But what we do know is that Ethereal was the one to bring the era to an end and help mortals no longer be controlled by immortals. This brought about the Era of Peace. With the war over and immortals collapsed into isolation, it brought an era of prosperity for mortal kind. Victa became a self-actualized kingdom, while the Lycans grew in population. The kingdom of Roquin and Kilahir were both established during this era, and for the first time, history was able to be documented and stored in libraries across the world, which is my personal favorite part about this era because I love reading, I love libraries, I love history, so this kind of stuff is incredible. However, as you can guess, the era of peace couldn't last forever, and it came to an end because of the 200-year war. This is the shortest period of time that is recorded as an era, but it was a substantial shift in how mortals and immortals interacted with each other in a way that had never been recorded before. The war started with a kingdom of vampires ruled by the Queen Vasilios. She had initially attempted to bring a new prosperity for vampires and all immortal alike, claiming she wanted only to bring peace between immortals and mortals and allow for immortal species to conjugate once more. However, the Queen's ideology wasn't received with hope, but rather with fear. After all, mortal species had every right to be afraid of vampires, and any other immortal for that matter. They were, by definition, extremely dangerous. They lived long lives. They fed upon the blood of other people, at least vampires did. And the likelihood of it becoming the snowballing effect of them eventually suppressing mortal species again was a genuine fear for most people. Not to mention, the queen herself brought a lot of fear. After all, she claimed to be a vampire, and yet she was the only vampire to ever be recorded in history to be able to stand in sunlight and be able to give birth to children, something that should be impossible to do. She even claimed that Eternal himself had blessed her and had allowed her to become so much more than just a vampire. Though we have no evidence whether or not her claims were true to this very day, if they were at all true, it meant that the god Eternal had violated the rules Ethereal had put in place, which meant not only was Eternal defying the goddess Ethereal, but so was Vasilios for even existing. This led to tensions rising and mortals eventually going to war with Vasilios and her kingdom. This war brought generational damage to the mortal species to the point that it can still be felt to this very day. Lycans had gone extinct before the war was over, leaving behind only the lichen disease, which to this day is still a threat to every mortal who ever comes across a werewolf. Humans were also brought to near extinction before the war was done. It only ended when the queen was killed, bringing about the collapse of her kingdom and the disbanding of the immortal congregation that had occurred. Elves were forced to recant their efforts in the war as they had began the war on the queen's side, fighting on her behalf before turncoating and assisting the mortals in ending the war. Even though they assisted in bringing an end to the war, they were still forced to be abandoned in the Diaspora Desert to fend for themselves, leaving a power vacuum for the empire of Roquin to grow. With the war over, the next era to follow was the Era of Conflict. This era is one of the longest recorded periods of history. Known for the War of the Twins in Kilahir, a 1,000-year Cold War between Kilahir and Roquin, the near collapse of Roquin brought about by the internal conflict of their own ruling system, not to mention the constant intervention from the gods trying to stave off wars or even start wars between mortals, the continuous threat of various cropped up immortal species trying to gain some type of foothold of power in the vacuum that was Vasilios' kingdom, not to mention the worst of it, Eternal's corruptions. They were most documented during this period of time. They are compared to demigods. Much like the gods themselves, they cannot be killed, and yet, unlike other demigods who were born between either two gods or between a god and a mortal, these things just seem to crop up out of nowhere, usually to create pain and devastation or start conflicts between mortals before they would just vanish. It was a time of constant tension and the fear of what the gods or people were capable of. This was the era I was born in. I grew up hearing about the constant fighting among mortals as well as mortals and immortals, but by the time I was a teenager, the first terror began to consume the Cadian Badlands, and all personal conflicts came to a screeching halt. And that would bring us up to date. There's really nothing else I can talk.
Don't lie.
What? What are you...
Should I tell them the truth?
What truth? Why are you here?
There's more.
No, I don't want to do that. Don't make me do that.
Read it.
No. Please, just go away.
Read it.
Okay. I'll read it. With the terror in reality, the era of conflict ended, and brought with it the paradox crisis. The fabric of space and time itself opened, taking anything around in the process, destroying people, places, and kingdoms within seconds, leaving only a hole into the void in its wake. Cassian allowed the world to be torn apart until nothing remained except the void. I didn't do this. It's not my fault. Please, Mortem. Please come back. Make him stop. Please make him stop.
Call to them.
How long have I been here? How long have I not been able to sleep? How long am I to stay here? How long am I to be punished? How long will I be left here?